If you're not willing to do the learning work, you can't have financial freedom. You just can't. You have to study money. If you want to be successful with money, you have to study it. And that's why I love what you do. I loved listening to Mary Buffett's podcast on your thing the other day. If people aren't subscribed to your stuff, they really need to subscribe to it. One podcast isn't enough. You've got to keep listening.
Welcome to Financially Free Podcast with your host, Nay Torres. One of the reasons Nay could retire when he was 25 years old is because he was coached by the best. And now through this podcast, so can you.
Welcome to the show, Mr. Sugar.
Hey, wonderful to be with you. Financial freedom is a wonderful subject, so I love talking about it.
This one is going to be interesting because you and I share the same mindset, and I know you don't. You just speak your mind the way it is, as a good Australian does. They're known for doing that. What's your intake on financial freedom, by the way?
Look, ultimately, it takes about 10 years to become financially free. It depends on when you start learning it. I was lucky enough to start learning about financial freedom at about 13 years old, and then really studied it from 16 onwards. And so by 26, I was retired financially. I've gone back to work, obviously, because I just retirement or so-called retirement was very, very boring, and I just love the game of business and the game of investing. I think it's a lot of fun.
We were just talking a moment ago. You said something that it's a different point of view of mainstream media right now, which is most Instagram personalities out there talk about hustling or grinding and stuff like that. You have a different perception. What's your perception?
Look, the reality of it is I started with, when I was a young man, the hustle and grind mentality didn't really exist, but you worked hard. I worked my tail off, and I worked 12, 14, 16-hour days, 5, 6, 7 days a week. What I know now as in my, I'm now 49, I realized that hustle and grind is just the new stupid. What I did back then is I didn't know enough to be able to run my business properly. See, hustle and grind just covers up a lack of, there's something wrong in the business fundamentally if you have to work that hard. There's something wrong with your business model, something wrong with your product model, something wrong with your sales, your marketing. If you got to work that hard, there's something wrong in the core business. So ultimately for me, it's like, yeah, hustle and grind is the new stupid. I do get a little bit annoyed when I see that coming out of all of the gurus out there of today.
So how does a day in the life look for you? Or a week or a month?
Yeah. The average week, I work Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 till 3 when the kids are at school. The last few months of COVID, I've worked pretty hard, although I did just take 3 weeks off to travel the country with my family. We have 5 kids, so we have a pretty busy life from that perspective. But I only work 2 days a week. I have 9 companies that I run. And it's just an interesting, actually, we might have 10 next week, because what I do is I buy companies and I fix them and sell them. And that's basically my life. But I don't want to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm not that person. I would rather be the person that my philosophy on business is you build a business that works so you don't have to. I build companies that are assets. I build companies that make me a return, that return me money, and my CEOs run the company. I generally will work with my CEOs either an hour a week or an hour a month, depending upon how long they've been with me or how close the company is to just being purchased. If we've owned it a long time, generally it'll only take me an hour a month to work with the CEO. And if we've just bought it, generally I'm going to be working with them about an hour a week to get things up to where they need to be in order for the business to be making us a good profit.
I want listeners to know Brad is the real thing, the real deal. When he says he went to, camping, you said? With the family, he really means he rented 2 full-blown rockstar buses to go through the United States. It's not like he was camping like.
Well, it was a great way to see the country. Our drivers would drive overnight, and we would wake up in a new part of the world and go and see another part of the world for a couple of days. And we did camp though. We had campfires at night. I mean, we stayed in the RVs and there weren't RVs. They are actually tour buses for rock bands. My buddy owns that company, and he said, "There's no one using them." I said, "I'll go use them." So So we did, and our drivers were wonderful, and the kids had a great time. They had their bus, and my wife and I had our bus. So.
I've always thought about camping, and I don't really like it that much. But if I go your way, definitely that's the way to do it.
Brad, there's been a lot of my friends have said the same. They're like, "What is the company you use to do that?" So,
yep. Yeah. Before we start talking about the strategy, because today I want to talk about what will Brad Sugar do if he was starting from zero. Before we go there, I just want to ask a couple of questions I've always had, because I started learning about ActionCOACH, your company that you created probably 15 years ago. I started in sales partners with Blair Singer.
Okay.
And it's in the same
Blair,
industry.
I met Blair. Dang, I believe I might have been 20 or 19 when I first met Blair through the Money and You program. And through Blair, I met Robert Kiyosaki and started teaching for Robert over in Hawaii. And yeah, long story short, but that education piece that DC Cordova put together with Money and You and ran that around the world was a great spark for a lot of wonderful entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I wonder about that. We should talk about that later. But yeah, in that environment, I started learning about ActionCOACH, because you guys are the biggest guys in that industry. I know you had, I think I went once with John Bruley to the Arizona State University football field. You have a suite right there, a huge one.
Yeah. So the Cardinals football team is my football team. So wonderful team. They do an okay job. When you come from Australia, you have to pick a team, and it's like, all right. And I literally picked the team based on the fact that they had a much nicer stadium with better suites than San Diego or San Francisco did at the time. And now that I'm married to an American, my wife is from Massachusetts, so I've adopted the Patriots as well as my other football team.
So you take a jet from Las Vegas to catch a game in Arizona, in Phoenix, and you go back for lunch.
Yeah, it was funny. I used to joke with John because my friends that lived on the other side of town there in Scottsdale, I would be home before they were. And it was because the traffic down there was crazy. But, being Australian, one of the things we learned to do is we learn that lifestyle is more important than anything. It's about, how much do you enjoy life? How much fun do you have? And maybe that's our convict roots. I always joke with the English every time I go to England. I always joke with them that, you guys sent all the fun people to Australia 200 years ago. And they have a little bit of a giggle, but they don't really laugh because they know it's true. And that's just the way the world is. And I know when I first moved to America back in 1998, and I sat down and I was meeting people, and it really intrigued me that people would work at a job they hated to provide for a family that they didn't really even know anymore. And it was like, you guys are kind of crazy. And so when I started teaching how to build a business that works without you, people were like, that's kind of weird. You can't be successful if you don't work that many hours, can you? And yeah, it was an interesting philosophy shift for a lot of people to learn that the goal is not to be always working. The goal is to build something that can work for you and without you, so that you don't have to actually consistently turn up all the time. And, I meet a lot of people who make a lot of money who, if they don't show up, they don't make a dime. And it's like, yeah, look, there's a different philosophy.
For sure. And this is exactly what we see in this podcast. There's people that make money some way that other people say it's impossible to make. What I like about you have your own mindset. You created your own reality, and it's always good to share that one. Another question I have for you is, I keep hearing this phrase in your interviews, is you were probably 20 and you had complaints with your dad that you didn't have the employees you wanted. And he said something interesting. What was that?
Yeah, dad was always a very blunt man. And I remember I think I was 20, maybe 21 when I went to him, and I said, you know what, Dad, I just can't get good people. Because, when you're recruiting, you're always trying to find the best people and that sort of stuff. And he just looked me dead in the eye and he said, son, you get the people you deserve. You're an average manager running an average business. Highest caliber of employee you're going to get is average. And, at the time that stung quite a bit, but let's be blunt. Great people want to work in great companies that are doing great things. Great people want to work for great leaders. They want to work for and this is one of the challenges that a lot of startup companies have, is that, the best caliber of employee they're getting is not that high. And so we have to learn methodologies for recruiting and getting the best people. I was on a chat with some of our clients at ActionCOACH yesterday, and they asked a question which my answer was, listen, if you're hiring people that are underqualified, if you're not, let me rephrase that. If you're not hiring people that are overqualified, you're hiring people that are underqualified. And if you, let's say you want to double your business, you have to hire someone that's worked in a business that's double the size of yours, not someone that's worked in one that's half the size of yours. If they haven't done it before, how do you expect them to be able to do it for you, or teach you how to do it, or show you how to do it? So I always like hiring overqualified people rather than underqualified people.
What did your dad do? Because that's a very wise thing to say.
Yeah,
so,
my dad ran piping companies, so they manufactured big pipes and stuff like that. And here's a real interesting thing. I remember when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my dad and mom came to us and said, listen, Dad's got to go away for a month. He's going away to learn business. And we're like, what do you mean? And he was sent away for 30 days of management training when he got promoted to manager. And the thought that always comes to me today is, how much management training do companies give their employees today? It's like, it's 5 minutes. Here's the keys. Here's the security code. You're now the manager. There's very little management training put into people these days. And so, it's very simple. My latest book, I go through a whole segment on human development, and pulling profits out of a hat is the book name. And what we go through there is, if you don't build your people, they can't build your business for you. Your job is to build your people. Your people will build your business. If it's only you building your business, then it's going to be a dang hard job. But if you build the people and they can build the business, then the business grows much faster.
So it's clear. Very good. So the reason I'm excited to talk to you is because you have a world point of view. Most people think or talk about their niche market, which is either the US or Europe or something like that. But you can really talk about globally, because your brand is pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, we operate in 83 countries. I'm very proud to say that we coach business owners in 3 communist countries, Russia, China, and Vietnam. I mean, it's kind of unique to be able to do that. But like in Vietnam, the level of entrepreneurialism coming through Vietnam right now is phenomenal, just phenomenal. And I just sit back and I look at what's going to happen when the entrepreneurialism and like India, the phenomenal level of millennials, because the age group of India, I mean, it's more than 50% of India is in the millennial age group. It's phenomenal to see that entrepreneurial group just taking hold of the world. I've big interests in India over the coming 10, 20 years.
So here's my question. What will Brad Sugar do if let's call me an evil demon somewhere, right? And I come and I take you out of your body. You're not Brad Sugars anymore. And I put you in somebody else's body. You're starting from zero. What do you do? Probably
the first thing I've got to do if you put me in someone else's body is get fit. That's probably the first thing I've got to do. So from a financial viewpoint, the first thing I look for is a business. The first thing I look for is a business that's for sale where I can buy it with no money down.
So hold on. What you just said is very important, because when I learned that for the first time, that was a shock. Like, what? Buy a business? You don't start a business, you buy one. Why will that be, first of all?
Well, starting a business is very costly from a time perspective, most of all. But if you're starting a business, you've got no customers, no cash flow, no nothing. If I go and buy a business, I've already got cash flow, I've already got things. Now, what I want to buy is a business that's undervalued. What I want to buy is a business that's run pretty badly. Like if I teach real estate, I don't teach you to buy the most beautiful house on the street. I teach you to buy a pretty ugly house that needs fixing up. It's on a good street. It's a good type of house, but, it needs fixing up. And so I do the same with business. And that's pretty much what I've done all my life. I buy companies that need fixing. Right now, I'm in the middle of negotiating to buy a gymnasium chain. through COVID, they shut down, and here they are. They haven't reopened yet. They're in struggles. Their management's all a mess. The product is brilliant. The actual concept is really, really good. Their customer base loves them, but they're just badly managed. And so I'll buy that business and turn that around and make good money out of it. It's only run in one city in the United States. I can expand it by either franchising or capitalizing it and opening it up across the world. But if I go back to just me with no money, I would look for a business that is a pretty good business where the owners or managers or people running it hate the business now. I've bought so many businesses over the years where it's been like a husband and wife, and they started the business together, and now not only do they hate the business, they hate each other, and they want out at all costs. See, if you hear that statement, I want out at all costs, then there's a pretty good chance I can buy that business for A, very little money, and B, no money down. Like I can say to them, listen, I'll pay you over the next 3 years type thing. Those sorts of deals are there. I wrote my book, Billionaire in Training, around that subject of understanding, because most people go to buy a business have never bought a business before. Why wouldn't you at least study how to buy a business? I used to once a year run a 3-day course on how to buy businesses and how to buy, build, and sell companies. I think I'll do one virtually in the near future, because it's just such a subject that people they just don't understand it. I would buy that business. I would look to buy it, and I would look to hold it for somewhere in the vicinity of 6 weeks to 6 months and turn it around and sell that business, and then move on and do another business. Get a chunk of capital from that first one, and then use that chunk of capital to actually be able to put some down money for a next business, but still negotiate hard to buy it. Build that next business, again, 3-6 months of ownership, turn and sell that business. And then once I started having a decent size business, I would start investing again in real estate. I would, real estate for me is one of the ultimate investments, because, and the funny thing is about real estate, most people teaching real estate investment really don't understand real estate investment. I ask them, what is the number one reason you invest in real estate? And most of them tell me stupid things like, it'll grow in capital value, or, I collect the rent, or that sort of stuff. And they don't even realize the number one reason real estate is a great investment is you only ever pay for 20% of it. You put down 20% deposit, you put a tenant in who pays for the other 80% of the asset. Now, if the asset goes up in value, fantastic. If it doesn't go up in value, still fantastic, because I've made 400% return over 20 years of paying off the mortgage. And as long as I've got a rental income that is capable of paying off the mortgage, and as long as I buy in an area where I'm not going to have massive time of no rental, massive vacancies, then real estate is the best investment in the world. If you want to retire in 20 years and you've got 20% of your retirement funds already, then you're fine. You just put that 20% into real estate, someone else pays for the other 80%, and life's good. And I mean, there's so many more things I can teach about real estate, but that's the fundamental core of it. And people just, even the teachers of real estate don't get that that's the fundamental reason real estate is brilliant, is that you only ever pay for 20% of it.
Very good. I really recommend people to read his books. How many books have you written?
I've written over 20, but we have 17 that are currently still published. Several of them we combined into one and all that stuff. So, but yeah, there's 17 currently published. If people are looking for wealth, my books, The Wealth Coach and Billionaire in Training. I wrote The Wealth Coach because I have lots of kids and I wanted my kids to learn money. So I wrote a book for kids to understand money. And funnily enough, I gave it to one of my adult friends and said, read this and see if your kids would like this. And he came back to me and he said, dude, this isn't for kids. This is for me. I don't know all of this stuff. So I was like, okay, good. It's a book for adults and kids then.
I think I have your board game. Did you make a board game? Or am I?
No, I did. I made a board game. It still sells today, actually. We play it in a lot of companies because it teaches businesses how to actually grow their business. And so I find that people learn better when they're having fun.
Yep, true. I still have that
It's called Leverage, by the way. It's
Leverage. That's it. Yes.
You're going to have to pull it out and play it again now.
Okay, so that's super clear. The thing people probably are going to be asking right now is that easy to buy? It sounds easy. It's probably not that easy. It takes execution. But I didn't know you will just aim to hold it for 6 months. Isn't that too soon?
No. Usually, if you get in and you fix the sales and marketing of a business, it doesn't take more than a quarter or 2 quarters to do that. When you look at the management of most businesses, the management is quite atrocious. And so therefore, putting in very basic management systems. And if people want to jump on either my YouTube channel or my Facebook or my LinkedIn, I'm on all social media, except Pinterest. I'm not really a very crafty person. But if people want to, I did a whole video on the difference between management and leadership. And, I do that stuff all the time, that education, because I think that it's very important to learn that. But turning a business around doesn't take much more than 6 months. In fact, in some cases, it can be done in a matter of weeks, just because the knowledge base I have versus the knowledge base of the current owner is entirely different. The hardest part of financial success is the learning. The learning is the most difficult part, and that's where most people aren't willing to do that. Therefore, they never end up with it. I have a saying of, don't complain to me about the results you didn't get for the work you didn't do. If you're not willing to do the learning work, you can't have financial freedom. You just can't. You have to study money. If you want to be successful with money, you have to study it. And that's why I love what you do. I loved listening to Mary Buffett's podcast on your thing the other day. If people aren't subscribed to your stuff, they really need to subscribe to it. One podcast isn't enough. You got to keep listening.
For sure. Thank you very much for the promotion. Buying a small business, fix it, turn it around, buying, fix it.
And not necessarily small. In the early days, I would have done it as a small one.
What is small? Give me some reference for the people listening.
Under millions. In the early days, I was buying businesses for tens of thousands. Then I got to hundreds of thousands. Nowadays, it's millions. But oftentimes, even multi-million-dollar businesses, I will buy them for part of the money today and part of the money next year and part of the money in 2 or 3 years type thing. You don't have to buy them with cash up front. Most people wanting to sell their business, they're not looking for cash up front 100%. A percentage of the cash, yes, but not all of it. So, there's another business I'm looking to buy, which is a locksmith business, which that'll be in the tens of millions, but I don't think I'll need to put down more than a couple of million in cash.
Interesting. I remember there was a time in Phoenix, Arizona, when I just moved to the United States for the first time. I was looking for businesses for sale. And I can tell you, selling a business is rather hard. Maybe you have a different perception, or maybe for you it's easy, but something I don't. But when people are trying to sell their business, it's very complicated, because first you don't want employees to know, or else they'll just walk away, It's kind of secretive, and they're willing to finance most of the sales price.
Look, there's ways to sell it where, again, it takes me a day at least to teach people how to sell a business, because again, it's something people have never done before. And if you've never done it before, going to do it for the first time is scary. Going to do it for the first time. And there's some great books out there on how to sell your business, but people won't read and won't study it. And therefore they're sitting there going, oh, I wonder what I should do. And therefore they'll walk away with less than what there is. I remember one of my students from the UK who came to me, and he's in the middle of selling his logistics business, transportation, trucking, all of that sort of stuff. And it was a global logistics business. And he was selling to a group out of China. And he showed me the deal. And I just looked at it and I said, why would you even bother selling it for that? That's just insane. You may as well just keep it, because based on what you're getting for it, you're going to have to turn around and replicate it. For you to do that, for you to sell it for a reasonable number, it needs to be this. And I told him, and so he went from going for a multiple of I think he was getting a multiple of 6 times earnings, and we ended up renegotiating and getting a multiple of 29 times earnings, because people don't understand how to sell, and so these are simple things that if you're not willing to learn it, you're going to get beat up out there in the marketplace. You got to remember, the people buying from him had bought many companies before, and guess what? They knew what they were doing. And if you're one of those people that doesn't know what they're doing, and you're in a negotiation with someone that does know what they're doing, you're going to lose. It's not a complex thing.
Did you learn something today? How can you apply your insights? What's next for you? The fastest way to make things happen is to just share this podcast episode with more people that may find it valuable too. Talk about it with them and surround yourself with like-minded people. Hope you found this valuable. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.
This podcast references opinions and is for information purposes only, not intended to be investment advice. Seek a duly licensed professional for investment advice.